Right, this is off of the Reddit Battle Brothers post that asked for some orc warrior kind of guides and tips and tricks for how I handle these kinds of things at the request of Orwellian and whoever else happens to want to know how to fight orcs. The video is gonna not have in-game audio because it recorded some stream that was that I was watching on the other screen. So in the background, you should be able to hear some nice, relaxing music and the soothing sound of my voice. Right here, what you see on the screen is the contract that I had taken was to lure out a bandit or an orc warlord rather, and we just did that by destroying a bunch of orc camps. And now, as you can see, we've got a greenskin horde after us. My roster right here consists of a few archers, a few good two-handers, and then the rest are frontliners. None of them, 3 or 4 of the two-handers are level 11, but the rest of the frontliners are not level 11. So I'd say day 246, a little bit midway through the game. Right now, what I'm trying to do right here is juke them out a little bit because my guys were hurt from the last camp that we cleared. So I'm just trying to buy some time to repair some armor and heal some HP back so that my two-handers are all nice and sturdy when I go into the fight. As you can see on screen, some orc young, some orc warriors, an orc warlord, and some ambushers or skirmishers, whichever ones the goblin archers are. I do believe there end up being 3 archers, a warlord, and then 6 each of young and warriors, something like that. Remember that sum is 4 to 6. So yes, in this case, I think because there's 16 of them total, it was 3 archers, a warlord, and 6 each of the young and the warriors here. So definitely not as big as the orc camp that the Reddit user was describing. But then again, my guys are also not quite as strong. They're not in 300, they're in like 250, 230-ish armor. And as you can see, what I'm doing right here is I'm reorganizing my guys, trying to figure out a plan of attack and figure out who I want to bring in. As you can see, I've got 4 two-handers. I've got one front line there with a famed cleaver and another frontliner with a famed hammer. The famed cleaver is really, really good. I don't actually have cleaver spec on this guy. Here I was considering bringing kite shields, but again, remember that when you bring shields to an orc fight, you're effectively going to be losing those shields. So long as you can accept that, then it's perfectly fine to bring those shields. A lot of people don't recommend bringing shields into orc fights. I think it's perfectly fine, especially on duelist type characters where they don't actually want to hold a shield forever. What the shield does is that it buys a couple of turns of the orcs focusing down the shield instead of focusing down you. As you can see, the loadout that I've decided to roll with is 7 frontliners, which is a total of 4 two-handers. The 4 two-handers are all level 11, and then 1 guy with the famed cleaver, 1 guy with the famed hammer, and 1 guy at the top who's our mega tank. And in the back row we have our bannerman. He's like level 10 or something like that. 2 polearm guys who are both fairly low level actually. I believe the bottom one is level 6 at the time I'm fighting, and the top one is a level 10 retired soldier. And of course we've got 2 elite archers holding warbows. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm spamming Indomitable on my front line. What this does is that this makes it so that when the orc young clash with you the next turn, they actually won't be able to stun you. Orcs, basically fighting orcs, in order to kind of make them not impossible to fight, you really, really want to have Indomitable on your team. High level Indomitable bros are really what enables you to fight orcs without dying, because when you use Indomitable, you're unable to be stunned. So when they jump in with their stun attack, they waste all their action points and all their fatigue doing that stun attack instead of jumping in and instead of just walking up to you and going for a slash. They kind of just spend all their AP jumping at you and failing to stun you. So it basically shifts the DPS in your favor, where you get the first hits on their front line instead of them getting the first hits and stun on you. Because what tends to happen is that if you don't Indomitable, it'll jump in, stun you, and then when you recover from the stun, you won't be able to perform an action, and the next turn they'll destroy you with whatever great weapons they have. So as you can see right here, we've got a total of 3 goblin archers. They just kind of shot down my adventurous noble, did a bunch of damage to his armor, but it's not too Not too bad. It's nothing he can't shake off. And you can see one of my two-handers actually has minus fatigue wound on him, so this definitely isn't that bad of a fight. And right now what's happening is that the first set of Orc Young have jumped into my Indomitable guy. And what I opt to do here is I opt to kill both of them. After I get the lucky headshot on the first one, I go, hey, might as well break the morale on the second guy. Now what that does mean is that he doesn't have Indomitable activated, and that he will get stunned next turn. But that's okay, because I'm planning to activate Indomitable on my other guys so that they can still clear those tiles. Again, as you can see, my frontliners, I kind of activated Indomitable a little bit too early. I probably could have held a turn, but I wanted to be safe because this was my first time fighting a Warlord, actually. Right there, what you see me doing is you see me using my tank to taunt one of the warriors in case he decides to jump in. This shows that the AI will prioritize some actions over directly jumping into you, because even after I taunted him, he just ran back and shield walled. So that's something that will make this kind of fight a little bit easier. The fact that they have goblins to protect instead of just directly swarming you. So when you're attacking bigger camps, like I will be later, you're definitely going to have a tougher time, especially since the camps are going to be bigger, they're going to have more young, they're going to have more berserkers, they're going to have more warriors. But as you can see, the general strategy kind of holds true. In this scenario, I only have four two-handers. And I'm really bringing kind of like a suboptimal comp here, where I still have 2 archers instead of just 1. I'd really prefer to get more two-handed weapons to bring them in, and then just start doing major damage so I can focus them down. It turns out that in this situation, having 2 archers is really good because it allows me to contest their goblin archers more. Thankfully, I didn't actually have any other two-handers at this point in the game yet, so this would have been much more difficult if those goblins were replaced by, say, 3 more goblin young. So what you can see there, I believe, is one of the Orc Young jumping in and getting the stun, and then my guy recovered. I kind of actually missed it. Yeah, I think, there you go. But here I am, I'm just waiting for them to jump in, and I'm still keeping Indomitable up. The warriors are staging, and because they're staging, what they're going to try to do next turn is they're going to jump into me. And they're going to try to stun my guys down and get free swings in. But when you have Indomitable, you know, what they're going to do is not going to work. There you can see that the warrior instead opts to walk up to me instead of wasting all his action points doing his jump. So in any case, while we kind of wait for these guys to actually decide to stage and come in, you'll see that this fight in my backline, as a reminder, I have 2 pole hammers and 2 archers and 1 bannerman. The bannerman is to counter the yells from the warlord because they will break your morale. Morale is really important in orc fights. Killing the enemy, dealing with the enemy's morale is a really good way to overcome the numbers advantage that they have, and also mitigating the morale checks to you is very important because morale affects the performance of your brothers a lot. I do have 2 extra archers here because my run had more archers and less two-handers, which did end up working out for me, as I mentioned before. The top pole hammer guy actually has hammer spec. He also has some things like Berserk and whatnot, but I don't think they actually end up being super relevant. Pole hammers are great against warriors because they can project lots of damage onto the front line at places that you want. As you can see, my guys are kind of just dancing back and forth and applying major armor damage to whoever they want here. I will say that pole hammers in the long run probably don't have enough DPS to handle large groups. Especially if you don't have hammer mastery, where they'll kind of get on top of you. The reason why it works in this case is because my pole hammer guys actually don't need to use Indomitable because there's just not enough warriors to kind of come around and surround them. So there you can see all these guys are engaged, and because they're all engaged, they're not going to be able to use their stun attack on me now. So this is a perfect situation for me. And what you just saw right there is my two-hander hammer bro just used his two-handed attack to absolutely obliterate that guy's armor and also to stagger him, which means he moves later in the round. What you want to do typically when fighting orcs is you want to, if there's young and they're not, like if there's young and you're in a position to clear them, you want to kill them because it'll proc morale checks on them, and young aren't actually completely ignorable. They're not super threatening. There are cases where you want to leave them. For example, on the bottom there, I actually mostly ignore that shielded young for the rest of this fight. However, there are the morale check from killing or even wounding the orc young can actually be quite valuable. As you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to inflict wounds on as many of them as possible so that it breaks their morale. It'll make their combat effectiveness much less. It's actually, you know, the equivalent of a few levels in terms of how combat effective they are. And as you can see, my elite archer is just cleaning up the goblins in the back. But as you can see here, like the goblins actually weren't too much of a threat to begin with against my guys in heavy armor. Goblin archers, when they're not with their standard retinue of shamans and overseers and whatnot, are actually not so bad to deal with. They're just annoying. As you can see there, the warlord is engaged to me, but he actually opted to use the yell to bolster the confidence of his orcs and lower my confidence. What I'm going to do next with my bannerman is I'm going to go ahead and rally up so that it negates at least the negative effect on me. But the reason why it was good that he had to do that was he's actually engaged to my guys, and I don't think my tank had taunted him yet, so he could have taken a hit on my two-hander, but he opted to do the rally instead. And that's part of the reason why it's really important to break orcs, especially when there's a warlord present. The idea is you have kind of resolve HP as well as standard HP, and his rally boost will target your resolve instead of your meaty HP. And when you have a bannerman in the equation, it's a lot easier to get to manage your resolve than it is to manage your HP, because once you're in a fight, that HP isn't coming back if someone loses it. So instead of attacking my two-hander there, who I don't think had Indomitable up, I'm not entirely sure, he actually opted to do the yell. Now, what that does is that it does bring their orcs back up to good morale. As you can see, one of them kind of rallied back, and two of them became confident. But at this point, when you're staggering them with your hammers and pole hammers, the newly confident orcs are still going to be moving last in the round, and you're going to get a lot of nice two-hander hits in there to bring their morale back down to snuff again. So there, I kind of paused, trying to decide whether I wanted to recover up or if I wanted to kill him. I opted to kill him to try for the morale check. I think it made the bottom one no longer confident. And also just denies the enemy more attacks. It's all about attacks. You don't want to leave enemies on low HP for too long, unless they're breaking and you can kill them. It's all about balancing how much morale damage can you do to them, and when to do that morale damage, as opposed to making sure that they actually get the damage done. So here is kind of an example of where later on in camps you're going to want characters that aren't archers. My archer just kind of shot the orc warlord right there for a really low amount of damage. If I had a polearm duelist, or if I had a hammer duelist, excuse me, or maybe even another two-hander, I could have gotten a step in there and gotten a major hit in, and that would have been much preferable to kind of tickling him with two arrows there. Archers, like I mentioned before, are going to be good for shooting down berserkers. They're good for applying damage to areas that are going to need help. They're good for clearing out young if they need to be cleared out. But again, you don't really need more than one or two archers, I'd say. And against larger camps, I generally prefer having more two-handers. So you see that confident orc right there got staggered, so now he's moving at the end of the turn. So the fact that he's confident now is more or less irrelevant. I use my tanky boy, who has something along the lines of 60 melee defense, to taunt the tank once again so that he doesn't even get a chance on my two-hander. That orc does knock me back and then gets a swing on the archer, which is pretty scary. I believe that swing was like 80% or a 68% chance or something like that. which was pretty scary. But now, as you can see, even the Warlord is broken at this point, and one of the Orc Young, I think that's an Orc Young, it might be a warrior, I'm not entirely sure. Looks like a Young to me though, is completely broken. And that other Orc Young that I mentioned earlier in the video is just been completely ignored by my guy up to this point, because he's irrelevant. If there is more orcs, if there are like other Orc warriors sitting in the background there, I would have been more than happy to let that Young sit where he is, because all he has is like a regular mace, you know, like it's a tier 2 mace. Sure, it's scary, but it's not nearly as scary as the cleavers and stuff that the warlord, or that the warriors and the berserkers carry. And there you see a good example of getting free hits in. That orc was afraid, so he ran away, and my guy got 2 free hammer hits. Those hammer hits cost 0 AP and they cause 0 fatigue, so it definitely shifts the damage per round in my favor when they just run away and decide to let my guys get free swings on them. And those kinds of swings are what you're seeking to get as early as possible. The most dangerous part of an orc fight generally is the start, where they have the most guys and they have the biggest chance to kill one of your guys randomly. Because if they start killing your guys, and they become confident and your guys become wavering, and that's the opposite of what we want. What we want to do is we want to do a lot of damage to them at the outset. Anyway, as you can see, I defeated the Warlord pretty handily. This was definitely an easier fight than the guy described in the Reddit post. There was only a total of 16, and three of them were Goblin Archers, so really it was only a total of 13 real orcs, I'd say. And the fact that the archers were there actually kind of helped us, because it slowed down their advance by a little bit. But again, this is pretty early in the run for me as well, and you can see that my guys, I do have some good guys, but a lot of my guys are still pretty average. My backline, the archers were high level, but the banner was mid-tier. The polearm guys were not level 11 yet for sure. So I think that's the end of the video. Yeah, those are just my general thoughts and comments. I believe this kind of strategy is applicable to orc camps as well. I have beaten larger scale orc camps in this actually, since this video, using the strategies that I kind of thought of beforehand. This just happened to be the video that I captured when I first defeated an orc warlord. I was really excited, so I got a Shadowplay recording of it. In any case, thank you very much for listening. I hope this helps you deal with orcs a lot. Deal with orcs a little bit. If you did like this content, it's more basically just me rambling. Feel free to follow me on twitch.tv/a_cleverfool. I really like Battle Brothers. I'm data mining it, and I'm making some mods. Super hyped for the DLC. One last thing I'd like to mention is, you see in the combat log, I actually didn't take too much damage. Very low HP damage and maybe middle of the road armor damage for some of the guys, like 2 or 3 of the guys, but no new wounds or anything. So this was a very clean fight. For camps, you know, they're exciting because you get to figure out who gets to live and who gets to die, and even high tier bros have a chance to die. But the loot is actually insane. So yeah, I think orcs are some of my favorite enemies to fight right now. You just do so much damage and so many things die, and it's so dangerous that it's super fun. Anyway, hope you guys liked it. Clever Fool, signing out.